Hello everyone, I'm Anna from Craft Me a Card and I love crafting for the crafter, and that is you. So today I'm going to be sharing with you how I made these beautiful Mother's Day cards using pressed flowers. They were a hit and a lot of people have been asking me how I made them, how I put them together. So that's what I want to share with you, and also I want to share with you how you can make a card and not use any dies whatsoever. These were made using these dies of these hands holding the flowers on the sentiment, but you don't need any of that in order to make beautiful cards for your loved ones. Alrighty, let me show you how I made these. Okay, so first of all, of course, you need dried flowers. And I've been at this for a little while now. Ever since Easter, my honey gave me a pressing kit, a flower pressing kit, and I will link that video up here for you. So I've been at it. I've been drying foliage, I've been drying little white flowers, fillers, which I like to call them. There's a lot that you can dry. So just keep in mind, whenever you press flowers, just go ahead and press all different kinds, different sizes, different colors, different textures, because you never know what you will be using. And it's just better to just keep all your options open. In this case, I want to do something very sweet. So I think I'm going to be using more of the little white flowers, which we find all the time in bouquets. Okay, I'm going to switch over to voiceover now, and this is the card base that we are going to be working on. Now, as always, this is a 6.5 by 5 inch card base, and I'm going to be doing the smushing technique on here. And the colors I'm going to be using are Abandoned Coral, Mildewed Lavender, which is one that I have not used before ever, so I'll be using that one. And I always like to bring in some yellow, Squeezed Lemonade. And for the smushing technique, what you do is you grab the color and you smush it onto your craft surface. I have this cutting mat that I bought at the Dollar Tree last year, and it has come in very handy. After smushing the colors onto your mat, you want to add some water. It doesn't have to be in a spray. It can also be drops of water, just to get the color moving. So there's a reason why I'm doing the smushing technique. I wanted something a little soft for my flowers to be on. For example, this card that I worked on, this is a beautiful background it has. It truly is. It's quite stunning. But to me, it is a little too busy. Although I really love how this card came out, I want to try something with a little more subtle, like this one. And I thought, if you don't have any cardstock that is already printed, why not create your own? And the smushing technique is perfect for something very soft. Okay, so you're just going to take your piece of paper and just smush it against these colors. And you could do different layers, but you do want to dry it in between each application. You can use a heat gun if you have one, or just let the piece dry on its own. So I did feel that the colors were a little too light, so I'm going to go ahead and apply a second layer of color. So since I feel it has too much yellow, I'm just going to use Abandoned Coral and Mildewed Lavender. And the same process, add a little bit of water and bring in the cardstock and just smush it against these colors. Okay, so this is more of what I was looking for, just a slightly darker pink. And again, because I wanted to speed up the drying process, I went ahead and I used the heat gun to dry it. Okay, now let's get on to putting this bouquet together. I do recommend using a glue gun or silicone glue, only because I felt that liquid glue was staining my flowers after time. And I do recommend a silicone gun that has a stand to it. And that is going to help me in applying the glue a little easier onto the stems of my flowers. And I'll show you how I work them in a little bit. But if you don't have a stand, don't worry. Just use what you have. It's just that I felt that the stand made the application a little easier for me. There are other reasons why I recommend the hot glue. It sets a lot faster. Plus, it's going to help give dimension to your flowers. If your glue gun has a narrow tip, that comes in handy.
The very first thing I do is turn on my glue gun so that we can start melting that silicone glue. Okay, next what I recommend is bringing in the green foliage. And this is going to kind of set the parameters of where we're going to be placing the bouquet. It's kind of like a skeleton of my work area. So just by getting some green leaves here,
and I place them by just adding a little bit of this hot glue, the silicone glue, to the back, and then I bring it onto my card base.
In some cases, I add a larger blob, I want to say, of glue to help the foliage lift from the paper. This is what I was referring to, that it helps add dimension to the bouquet. So a way that I do this is by adding enough glue, like a little mountain of it, and I place the foliage on top of it, holding it at an angle, and then I blow on it so that it cools off with dimension. And you could see here how some of these leaves are already lifting up and they are creating some dimension to this bouquet. So one by one, I bring in the foliage and I start setting these little blobs of silicone glue. And then I start placing them and blowing on them to cool them off at an angle. So next I'm going to bring in some softer pieces. This is baby's breath, I believe. And I just start adding them in different spots of the bouquet, just filling up the spaces. And if you're a florist, this is going to be right up your alley. And if you are not, you are going to be so satisfied in creating these bouquets and in just creating your own little masterpieces. Just make sure that everything is balanced. Now I'm going to bring in a different kind of white. This is not baby's breath. And I start adding this. It's just to give it different textures. And don't be afraid of cutting off the stems if you need to. If they're too long, just go ahead and cut them off. And you can fill in the gaps and place them exactly where you would like them to be. You can see here all the wonderful dimension that this card is already having. So I just try to add the same kind of flowers on both sides of the bouquet and some in the middle, just to give it, again, that balance. Oh, this little flower fell off, but I think it is just so sweet. I'm going to pick it up and just add a little bit of glue onto the bouquet and place it right in the middle where I feel that it can be admired. Okay, and then I'm going to add another one of these different kind of white flowers to the other side to balance it out. Now I'm going to be moving on
to adding some color to this bouquet. Okay, so I moved the camera so you guys can have a better angle of how I work this. This is literally like 4 days after I started this card. The weekend got in the way. So I wanted you guys to have a better angle on how I place these pieces onto the card. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn on my glue gun here. So then I decide, bring in different little pieces to see what color I want. Now I decided to go with this little like pink orangey. So I'm going to bring in some petals here that I dried, that it was a rose. So I'm just going to kind of like place them in, see where they fit, see where they can go, and have them well distributed. This is a different one. This one I actually let it dry on its own. It's actually not pressed, but it's well dried. Just push these kind of like in here. How do I want it? And if I feel if it's too long, cut the tip off of it. And that'll fit better. Yeah, I think so. Let me get another one of these little pieces. Let's see here. You just play around with it and see where you want these pieces. And I have some of these pink baby breath that are dry. I guess that's how they dry them. This goes, I think, very well with the card base here. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and take my glue gun and then just put a little bit of glue here at the bottom. Then I'm going to put this piece on there. Good. Yeah, I like that. See? That piece right there, right in the middle. And then I could go ahead and stick this one. So this is what I want you guys to see. I just go in and I add a little bit of glue at the base of it. and then I just stick it in, just like that. And that allows for that little petal to be just peeking through there. All right, now this one, let's go ahead and add a little bit of glue at the stem of it, and then stick it where I was looking for it to be. Just like that. Okay, so then I'll bring another piece here. Let me see. I feel like I could use some there. Just get it and add some to the very stem of it. Just like that, and bring it in and stick it there. And then my tweezers maybe help it position. I just want it peeking through, just like that. That is already a very pretty bouquet. Like, ooh, look at this piece. This piece is interesting. This has like a dark purple. I think that's really pretty. I think I'm gonna put that right in the front. And that gave it like a little pop of color. I think it's very pretty. And I like these pieces that I got off of weeds that were growing. I guess this is where it gives the seed. And I'm just gonna press a little bit of glue here, because I just want a little bit, and then get it with my stem there, and then just place it in and press on it a little bit. Look at that. Isn't that fun? I love that. Gives it more realistic look. See? So I think that looks very pretty. And then I just clean off any webbing that I might see. I think this is a gorgeous, gorgeous little bouquet. Okay, so I'm gonna move the camera back up. Okay, so once our bouquet is nice and complete, I bring in my card base. And my card base is most of the time 5 inches by 6.5 inches long. I just go ahead and I crease it. So my main piece is going to be sitting right on top of it, but I want a little border around it just to help the bouquet stand out a little bit more. So I'm just gonna go in with my cutter and cut the edges just a little bit for a small border. I would like this frame to stand out a little bit more, so I'm going to bring in the abandoned coral again, and I am just going to go ahead and ink the edges of my card base so that this could be the first layer. And just with some liquid glue, I go ahead and I glue this on to my card base that has been inked up. And now to add some corners. There are many ways to add corners to a card. You don't necessarily have to have die cuts, metal dies. You could cut a little slit to the layer underneath and just push your top layer into it. Or in this case, I'm going to be using the crocodile. And I'm going to go ahead and ink up some more paper, some more cardstock with this abandoned coral. And I am going to go ahead and cut some corners. Usually these corners would be discarded, but I am going to be using these pieces to add them to my card. Once my pieces are nice and cut, bringing in my tweezers for help and adding some liquid glue, I go ahead and I place these 4 corners on the card, gluing them just a little bit above the edge so they could stand out a little bit more. So now your eye goes all over the place, not just in the center of the card. And I'm going to bring in some of this iridescent ribbon that I'm running out of. And because I'm on a no-spend year, I cannot buy more. But it's okay because at the end, I end up changing it to a darker ribbon because I wanted that ribbon to also be pulled into the card. But just here, you could see how I create these bows just with the bunny ear technique. Before I place this bow on, I feel that these stems should be a little longer. So just by grabbing some twigs, I go ahead and adding some hot glue to the base of the bouquet. I go ahead and I bring little pieces of twigs onto this bouquet. And then once that is complete, I go ahead and I add more hot glue and I place my bow right on top of it. Okay, so I would bring in my punch here, but I'm going to show you how to make some of these tags without a punch. Okay, so just by grabbing some white cardstock, I go ahead and I grab a piece about the width that I think would fit on the bouquet. And with a brush marker, I go ahead and my intent of calligraphy, I go ahead and I write celebrate. And I like celebrate because it could be for anything. Then to mimic the tag, I just go ahead and I cut the corners off at an angle. I felt it was a little too plain, so I just sponged on some color, also with abandoned coral. Added a little bit of that hot glue and just pressed it right at the bottom of the bouquet. So just like this card looks beautiful. But you know me, I need to add more. So I go ahead and I get some sequins, just different colors, and I place them all over the card. I also ended up adding some tube sequin. You could find these on dresses or blouses. And I like adding this to cards. It just gives it a different texture. And there is my finished card. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys get inspired. I hope you create and be happy. Thank you so very much for joining me. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so. Hit the notification bell, like, and comment. And see you next time. Bye-bye. The color, but Chewy, quiet, Chewy, no, stop it. Oops. Come on, got stuck.